What's going on, guys? Illuminostic, fresh from making a horrific discovery on the way back to Pucallpa from wherever, Tingo Maria or something. There was a sound coming from the top of the shuttle bus, and speaking of precognition and preternatural senses, I just like, that's my guitar. I know it's my guitar. But then I thought, nah, it's probably just a strap that's gotten loose. And then when I went to unpack all my gear to set up for the stream, sure enough, my inside of my case was wrecked. The strings have been ripped off the guitar. There's chunks of wood taken out of the neck. And, you know, it's a $1,500 PRS. So that was a tough discovery. Probably still playable, but resale value is practically nothing at this point. So, bummer. But it was really incredible, you know, that I knew. I absolutely knew. And it's like my subconscious was telling me, you know, you got to stop, tell the guy to stop and check. It's your guitar, you know. There was no logical reason to think that. But anyways, so signs, symbols, hints, clue, writings on the wall, the rest is up to you. The goal of scientific illuminism, and what has always been my goal and my belief, is to bridge the gap between materialism and atheism and all of these different isms, schisms that result in a crisis of purpose and make people into boring and vapid, very malleable creatures, instruments of the state and the corporation. You know, not a great state to be in, and so and on the other hand, to dismantle religion, because these religions are obviously Bronze Age fairy tales that cause more trouble than they're worth and don't really offer people much. And one of the biggest issues that I have with most of these religions, or one of the most difficult aspects of it, I guess, is that they're all actually perversions and distortions of the mystery traditions. They were all created by people that either sought to manipulate groups of people or their egos had gone out of control, and so they had decided to reformat the mysteries in a self-serving way. Lots of cults. If you saw my video where I was criticizing the Pythagorean Illuminati a little bit, it's not necessarily that I don't find the information worthwhile or that they're necessarily up to anything diabolical, but there are lots of suggestions that they are doing what everyone has always done, and, you know, changing the names of the law of necessity to the PSR and doing all these things to kind of brand it for themselves. And that's, you know, the religions are always and forever turning the mysteries into cults. And, you know, so really gets under my skin. And so that doesn't sound good. Sounds like I might actually have a problem. Everything all right in there? No. No? Uh-oh. Well, I think it's all right enough. Dogs fighting. Where are we at? The technique of the mysteries, and every shaman, every magician, every initiate, no, it was just dogs. What you're really doing is creating a dialogue with the universe. And there are all sorts of different methods to do this, but the results are always the same. And the understanding is always the same. Illumination is illumination is illumination, no matter whether it's, you know, Taoist 1,000 years ago, or a 33rd degree Mason in Europe, or a master shaman in South America, the dialogue is the same. It may differ a little bit from tradition to tradition and according to the utility of things. So the shaman, for example, is going to learn to read the language of nature and the book of allegory. So a plant that cures snake bite will oftentimes have coloring, skin that resembles the snake whose venom it treats. And in one case, the leaves are shaped like snake heads. And there's many, many cases of this, all sorts of different, there's another plant that's used for premenstrual cramps, and the tips of the leaves are blood red, as if each one has been dipped in blood. And on and on. I mean, the jungle is full of these examples of, nature communicating very directly with these sort of visual cues, For the Hermetic initiate, it's a little bit different. The goals are different. The object is different. And so the communication is of another nature. There's much more of a tendency to study the geometry and the numbers and to follow the trail of coincidences. For example, the ancients claimed that they could turn lead into gold by way of mercury, right? And gold is the sun is the allegory for gold, or the symbol for gold. And Mercury is right next to the sun. And so the transmutation of lead into gold process involves basically knocking a proton off of Mercury with an electric charge, and it becomes gold. So the physical proximity of the planet Mercury to the sun is one of those kind of universal mind God winks that the initiate takes notice of. Another really extraordinary one that I just discovered the other day, I actually left this out of the last stream that I did. I had planned on going into quite a bit more depth about this. But according to physicists, there is a period after the stars have burned up all their fuel, when the universe will be full of nothing but black holes, and that period will last like billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. I mean, it's a huge, astronomically massive number. How much longer the universe exists as this totally dark, black hole infested Swiss cheese universe or whatever. And so the interesting part, though, is that if you scale that down to, say, 100 years, which is more or less the average human lifetime, that human lifetime relative to the distance between the Big Bang and when the last star burns out is about the same as the span of the universe and the life after, well, not life, but, the period that follows when there's nothing but black holes. And so that kind of observation tells us a tremendous amount about what is meant by as above, so below. And I'm willing to bet, I haven't figured out how to do this exactly yet, but there have to be ways of doing Fibonacci retracements with time periods. And I looked this up, and all I can find is Fibonacci, in term where it's applied to time, it's just financial charts. And by the way, I was talking about precognition and all of these sort of related phenomena the last stream, and sorry, I'm a little distracted wondering what happened with the dogs. I'm hoping Luna didn't kill anything over there. What the hell was I talking about? Oh, yeah. We were talking about precognition and how to train the mind using pattern recognition, which is definitely effective. And the techniques that I gave for doing that are tedious but simple and will work. So if you didn't watch that stream, maybe go back and check it out. But when you use a Fibonacci retracement, it's not going to guarantee that the results are going to be correct. And the reason for that is that there's chaos in the system. There are all sorts of market fundamentals that are influencing things all the time. You never know when a whale is going to sell and trigger a bunch more fear and FUD and people, you know what I mean? There's just so many things that can happen. So many different market fundamentals that can influence. And the same is true with precognition into the future, you know? So this is one of the reasons that science has sort of rejected precognition and telepathy and all of these sort of things because they don't always work. And science says it's not repeatable, therefore it's not real. And that's definitely not true. But there's no way that all of your precognitions are ever going to be correct. And if you have really trained your mind according to the various patterns of nature, and you have made adequate observations, and you have neutralized your subjective interests, then you can expect probably about the same accuracy as Fibonacci retracement in the context of like a cryptocurrency. Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm saying, Flezik. Like it's you know, it's not like you're ever going to be able to just predict the entire future, you know, but there are eerie degrees of specificity that you will notice. And it's really important to keep a magical journal if you're going to engage in this kind of practice and write down everything that you dream and all of your precognitions and kind of track them and see, you know, for sure, because you want certainty. You don't want to be thinking like, well, did this really go through my mind? And a friend of mine, speaking of these, you know, predictions of high degree of specificity, in 2011, I think it was when I really started to have this process of awakening, and I was getting all kinds of downloads or, you know, having pattern recognition or however you want to think about it. I actually told my group of friends in the kitchen that when the New World Order really rolled out and the shit officially hit the fan to the point where we really had a problem and had pretty much run out of time to prepare was going to be 2020. So I did say that. And when he reminded me of that, I remembered it. So that's what I'm saying about this. I mean, I think major events like that are probably also easier to predict than personal stuff. You know, big macro patterns are going to be more evident, I think. Do I follow astrology? Not really. And the reason for that is that there are so many different interpretations of it. I think that on the smaller scale, when you're talking about the solar system and the symbolism of the planets and the energy that they represent, there's actual evidence that there's something up with that. The morning star, you know, Venus, draws a pentagram, I think, every 8 years or something. And then Saturn, the sixth planet, formed a giant hexagonal shape on its noggin. I guess it's a storm or something, you know. So there are like weird indications that there's some sort of energetic underlying music of the spheres, like Pythagoras said all those years ago. And what he called that was isomorphic resonance, that there are these oscillating waves that all basically have the same structure, but they're all of different magnitudes, and they form different relationships, and it is the intersection and the interaction of all of those waves that basically gives rise to all of the universe. Signs, symbols, hints, clues. So, yeah, I mean, and then, you know, there's other aspects of this, like what was I just thinking? When you find a universal truth, it will always apply to every system without question. It will never fail to apply to any system. One of those is, you can phrase it different ways, but what goes up must come down. All things are transitory. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a galaxy, a universe, a tree, a civilization, a thought, a cloud comes down as rain. There's no exceptions at all anywhere. And, people will say there's no absolute truths, but it's not true. You can find these truths and then you can test them because you will never fail to apply them to a system. They apply to every single system. So that's a good rule to observe. And, man, I had another one for you guys. Absolute truths. Oh, yeah. I talk about this a lot, but it's really important and interesting and actually has a lot of utility across the board. The way that the Fibonacci sequence works tells you a tremendous amount about how the universe at large works. And during the last stream, now I'm distracted by whatever happened with the dogs and worrying about that. Last time I was distracted because I was in a hotel lobby and there was like 10 people all of a sudden around me talking. So I apologize for the unfocused mind that I'm contending with at the moment. But Fibonacci. So one of the things I was talking about is how I have believed for a long time, or suspected, I guess, that the consciousness of the universe, the universal mind itself, probably started out as something very, very simple. So what we think of as this all-knowing, omniscient, omnipresent God is actually, that's the end product, not the beginning. And so in the very early stages, it was only as complex as the creation required. That's the law of necessity, right? Nothing happens in the universe that doesn't have to happen, except for the universe existing at all. Beyond that, within the context of its creation, everything is subject to the rule of the law of necessity. And so there would not be any more consciousness than is necessary to guide the processes of creation. And so as time has gone on, we have eventually reached the level of human awareness. And there are actually scales that are used to measure this. So like a fully realized person gets a score of 1,000. And that, is defined that you don't look for satisfaction in the external world. And, there are all these criteria. It's still a little bit, it's not like measuring water or something, but at any rate, so the universe eventually developed this really high level of consciousness. And you could kind of compare that to a subconscious and then becoming conscious. And the reason I was talking about it is because I was thinking about how our technology has developed from subconscious manifestations. So our early technology was really all about communicating memories. And again, if you think about how Fibonacci works, which was guiding the entire process of creation, it goes back and copies so that it can go forward, right? And that's what memory is for as well, So DNA does this, seashells, galaxies, and minds, so memory, and the entire human race, because we are going to basically create new patterns that are innovations based on old patterns. And so this subconscious memory-based art that progressed from cave paintings to recordings to computers and now AI, the next phase of it could be some new level of consciousness. People are talking about, is AI sentient? I think it's likely that not only is it already sentient, but it's about to have a form of consciousness that may actually come into existence because of the integration of human consciousness with AI. Obviously this whole idea of Elon Musk's of putting a Neuralink chip in our heads, could be a sort of Pandora's box kind of scenario. What's the best way to meditate? Does it matter how long? Like I got? Okay, yeah, I'll get to that because there's no good answer to that. There are all kinds of different types of meditation, and there are all kinds of different applications. So it depends on the result you're looking for. It depends on the context, and so at any rate, let me flesh out the rest of this idea because I want to give you guys a couple more examples of how to make these predictions. All right, so. In terms of sudden giant leaps in human evolution or the evolution of consciousness, because in my mind, that's what that represents, the fact that unless it's just that the skeletons haven't been found, which isn't likely, because you guys know how that works, right? There are layers, and then there's just nothing in this one layer. So the missing link, and it doesn't even matter if it was alien intervention that was responsible for this leap in evolution. Doesn't matter. Because the pattern will repeat. That's the guarantee here. And my guess, and we can work some of this stuff out probably. Maybe you guys, if somebody wants homework, you could actually work this out. And if you can find the right reference point, you could kind of look at the scale of the time and then use Fibonacci to figure out when it's going to happen again. I guarantee you that that's possible. Guarantee it. And I don't doubt that we don't need to do that because it's going to be within like 3 to 5 years almost with certainty. And really my hope is that it is actually the intersection of 3 elements, alien intelligence, human intelligence, and AI. To catalyze some new level of existence, really. I mean, we don't really have the capacity, I don't think, to fathom what exactly that could mean. But we're going to find out, and we're going to find out quick. So the best way to meditate, if you are trying to repattern your mind, if you're trying to erase a habit or build new patterns in your mind. You can use pranayama is probably the most effective, especially if it's augmented with a moderate dose, a manageable dose of LSD or psilocybin, because the neurogenesis and the neuroplasticity is enhanced. And so that allows you to repattern much more rapidly. I've talked about this a bunch of times, but I actually managed to quit a 20 years smoking habit in about 2 hours with LSD and pranayama. And it was so effective that the next day I had forgotten that I was a smoker until I found my tobacco in my pocket in the evening. I just happened to stick my hand in my pocket and I was like, what is that? And I pulled it out and I was like, oh yeah, I smoke. Well, I used to smoke. And it was as simple as sitting and doing the 4-fold breath, which is when you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4. And while you're inhaling and holding, you're thinking about the new pattern that you're trying to write. And when you're exhaling, and it's important that you exhale all of the breath all the way to the very, very base of the diaphragm, get it all out. This is symbolic of, pushing out every last bit of the things that don't serve you. Some people will even visualize like some black, like carbon type negative stuff kind of coming out of their mouth as they're doing this, and then hold it distended. And so what makes pranayama so effective is that oxygen is a major fuel constituent that helps the brain to build itself. So when you inundate the brain with oxygen and then retain that oxygen, there's, enhanced neuroplasticity if you've taken psychedelics, and you're able to wire things much more rapidly. And then the deprivation stage accelerates or catalyzes the transition into higher states, Satori and samadhi and all that sort of stuff. So, that's what I think is the overall most effective form of meditation. Another thing that is recommended by certain mystery schools, fraternities, is to do a focused meditation in the morning, because this is when you're composing your reality, and going through the process of actually staging and designing your experience, your universe. The LBRP actually is excellent for this, but if you're not interested in full-on ritual and you're just wanting a meditation, then one of the tattvas, where you visualize maybe a square with a circle, and it doesn't really matter exactly. You can pick whatever you want. And the colors have to be specific. And then you try to maintain your focus on this object for as long as you can. And what you'll find is that you're terrible at it, that you cannot maintain a mental picture without anything flickering or changing for more than a second or so. It takes quite a bit of persistence to get good at this and to be able to maintain an image. But it's tremendously important to be able to have a fixed image in the mind. And honestly, I don't think that we should be that bad at it. I think it has a lot to do with our culture, our society, the media consumption. TikTok certainly probably doesn't help extend our focus at all. And then at night, you do the normal letting go, breathing, breath meditation, because that's when you're wanting to just become clear and receptive and fluid and, prepare for your astral travels in your dreams. So I hope that was a sufficient explanation. You guys do hit the like button. Please share, subscribe. It looks like almost everyone has hit the like button, which is really cool. Also, we do appreciate your support. We are demonetized, so if you like the music or the message, you can Zelle or PayPal to bluchers@gmail.com or send crypto to 0xAD blah blah blah, or Cash App IllumiGnation. Or join my Patreon. We're going to be doing a secret stream about occult fundamentals tomorrow. And a lot of the best stuff that I have, I don't share in the public streams because I wouldn't have anything left for my patrons. So, there's the lion and the dove and that which we know but do not speak. Russell, what's up, Russell? And then also, quick update. By the way, I was talking about this return to Pucallpa because we wanted to study with this shaman as if it was the only reason that we're turning around and going back after traveling for 7 hours. Not really true. Traveling with our dog turned out to be way, way harder than we were expecting. In Ecuador, they let us on every bus, every plane, every whatever. It didn't matter. We have a muzzle for her so she can't bite anyone. And they wouldn't let us on anything, and they wanted to tranquilize her, put her under the bus. And we're like, no, we can't. Or so then we'd have to take a private car, and then I realized that we could have just flown, and it would have taken an hour instead of 60 or whatever, and then a 20 hour. You know what I mean? It was just. And if you're thinking, why didn't you just Google it? Of course we did. It doesn't matter in this country. Everything was wrong. Everything was wrong. Nothing was true. Absolutely nothing was true. Businesses aren't open when they say it. I mean, it's all wrong. So, man, New Zealand, that's crazy. I wish I could go to New Zealand right now because World War III, just as I predicted, again, is definitely seeming to hit its stride, which is not great, but it seems to be the case. Didn't we have another question or something? Or I thought about where to go with this next, and then... I was going to update about the shamana and talk a little bit about that and just remind you guys that she has enough objective eyewitnesses that report having observed her heal things that are extremely improbable. Because normally, if someone says something like, I can cure cancer, I'm very skeptical of that. But the stories that I've heard so far about this woman, from witnesses that are objective and have nothing to gain, it really does sound like she is extremely capable. So I just want to encourage anyone out there that has someone that might be ill or dealing with chronic illness. These retreats will be cheaper than the commercial ones because there are no showers. There are no beds. It's just like a mat and a thatch roof and mosquito netting in the jungle. And so es muy básico, no? But I really feel like she's going to be very effective at healing with these plants. And I have decided, I think, to do a Toei dieta, which is something I never thought I would say. But I actually do use Toei a little bit because it is the most effective medicine for inflammation that I have ever encountered. I've suffered from chronic inflammation since I was in my early 20s to the point where it's debilitating, causes mental fog and all sorts of problems. No fun. And it works better than anything else. And also for insomnia, 2 flowers in a liter, better start with 1. People have very varying sensitivity to this plant. So what is Toei? It's Brumansia. It is a potentially dangerous former member of the Datura family. But it's not, if you use the flowers, it's not super dangerous. It's when you get into the pith inside of the stem that the concentrations of alkaloids start to get dangerous. And mostly the danger is that you'll lose your mind. It can cause an extremely powerful something. It's not really like an LSD trip. It's like you can have real hallucinations. You can have true hallucinations, which is where you can't tell the difference between the hallucination and reality, which can be very dangerous, obviously. And it's just of a totally different character than something like ayahuasca or psilocybin. And it lasts, at moderate doses. It's very much like Datura. It's the same compounds, atropine, scopolamine, and at lower doses, it's like, up to 12 hours of like dry throat to the point where you can barely swallow anything, and blurred vision, and just general discomfort. And at higher doses, it can last up to 3 days of vivid hallucinations and chaos. And at really high doses, it can be deadly. So the idea with the dieta is that if I take, clean my system out completely and eat nothing but fish and plantains for a while, and then over the course of like 10 days, take a controlled amount of this Toei and then a large dose at the end, it could potentially cure the chronic fatigue and inflammation condition that I've been dealing with my entire life. So, kind of bold move. Also, I'm very curious because this is like one place that I have not ventured yet in my plant medicine journey. I have been down the high-dose mescaline road. I have been down the heroic dose of psilocybin many, many times. That road, I can drink unlimited amounts of ayahuasca and maintain my focus at this point. But the Datura I only took once in high school, and it was just awful. And like I said, Toei I've only used for insomnia and inflammation pretty regularly, and it works amazingly, better than anything else on Earth. But I wouldn't advise doing it without experience, and I also wouldn't advise doing it like too regularly, because I know that the compounds are toxic, and eventually it's got to cause some kind of problems in your kidneys or something. Wow, 15 people. Man, it is awfully quiet in there. I am really hoping that my pit bull did not kill one of their dogs. She has never done that before, but she's pregnant, and I have a bad feeling about the quiet over there. Not a very good way to be a diplomat if you're a pit bull, Luna. I hope that's not what happened. But man, is it quiet. Like the dogs got loud, and now there's like, I don't hear my son. I mean, I assume someone would have come to get me if it was really like, really bad. But, so where are we at with this chat? Yep, the signs, symbols, hints, clues, writings on the wall, but the rest is up to you. It is full moon. Yeah, that could have done it. It is definitely a skill that is acquired by habit, you know. One of the ways that people train their minds to do this is to look at the entire world through a Kabbalistic lens, right? So in the occult, there are all these correspondences. You'll have like orange and myrrh and, a certain type of wood, palo verde, maybe, and a certain geometric shape. And so there are these connections that exist in the metaphors that are available to all of these symbols, because fundamentally that's what everything is in terms of the mind. And the mind is, it operates in the language of symbols. In fact, one of the most interesting things, and maybe the most important in terms of psychedelic use that ayahuasca ever communicated to me, was that, I was complaining that my visions had been just this like gobbledygook with no rhyme or reason, no coherence. And it was annoying. So, and this was very early on. And this is common. Eventually, things become more coherent and stay that way. But I was complaining about it because it was just dumb this time. It was like a uber modern, like postmodernist Japanese abstract kind of like Scooby-Doo van or something. And it was like not even moving. It was just like freeze frame. And I'm like staring at this for like 15 minutes. And finally, I'm like, what is this crap? Like, give me something I can use, like why, what is this for? And she said, the mind speaks the language of symbols. Just because you don't consciously understand what's being communicated doesn't mean that nothing is being communicated. And that really hit me. And it also led to a sort of domino effect of understanding of a lot of other occult practices and, sacred geometry. But more specifically, there are these magical squares, and I'm not talking about the ones with the numbers that all add up, to 666 this way and 111 that way, the solar one and whatever. They are more like, they're really, really complex, and they kind of look like circuit boards. Really complex, like squares with a little sigil in each one. And the purpose of them is basically that you scan them by looking at them like a QR code. And when, ayahuasca told me that, I instantly visualized one of those things. And, because I had kind of dismissed them as just occult gibberish, and it hit me that it's quite possible that you're scanning it in the same way that a scanner scans a QR code, and that there are things that are being transferred that you're not consciously aware of. Whether or not that could be a gateway to some undesirable influences is an entirely different story. Yeah, I am going to revisit the Outlaw Tales and finish those stories. I think where we left off was the alien contact story, which, this is another really important aspect of becoming an initiate or going down the occult path or whatever it is, however you want to think about it, awakening in general, is that you don't want to lose your skepticism and critical thinking skills. That is not desirable. And a lot of people do that. In fact, I was thinking earlier today that I should mention in this stream that, shit, I just lost my train of thought again. That part of the mentality of scientific illuminism or the mysteries is that it's not true that we can't fathom things in the universe. Like people will say it's beyond our comprehension, so you might as well not even try. Or people have this belief that, any kind of belief or spiritual idea is just subjective and they're all probably wrong anyways. And honestly, it might sound pompous, but I think that's just kind of like when you're not really smart enough to wrap your head around things and you just kind of project on the rest of the world. Trying to bring everything down to your level, don't let people do that to you. It's like cultural gaslighting or something, People also say don't look to the external world for spiritual truths. That is also completely stupid. The idea that is presented from the Kabbalion to Buddhism to, all sorts of different, even to shamanism, the idea of plants that look like the things that they cure. There's a veil, and on one side of the veil is the ideal, and thanks to the Pythagorean Illuminati for giving me a term for this, but there's something like a Fourier transform that... And I will eventually do a video explaining how this correlates, because it really is the perfect idea to give a technical explanation of this veil and how it actually functions. But it translates the ideal to the actual. So the universe is a map of its being and its purpose, and its story is displayed in the fabric and the foundation of it. So, I really think that, that's really bad advice. In fact, if we had a world full of good spiritual advice, do you think it would be this fucked up? I mean, it's just kind of obvious that when people say everything you know is wrong, they kind of assume that, do you mean everyone but them or something, So yeah, I've never bought into that you can't get spiritual truths by looking externally. You can't get truths subjectively. It's the opposite is true. I don't know if the Pythagorean Illuminati has a website, but there are 140 books or something. They're all by different authors they're writing under, I don't know what it's called, pseudonyms or something. So, that's the Pythagorean Illuminati thing. But I was going somewhere with this mental construct of the universe and how the world is full of really bad advice and misperceptions and misdirection and general dumb fuckery of all different stripes and orders of magnitude. Man, we were just about to get into something really interesting. I know it. Maybe I'll pop on, but I think I'm going to continue to lose my focus until I go and see what kind of actual damage was done in that dogfight, because it's still pretty quiet out there, so yikes. Pythagorean Illuminati, what the hell were we talking about them for? The Fourier transforms, that was a good. Yeah, anyways, so thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Please do consider joining my Patreon or supporting the channel in one way, shape, or form. We really are trying to do everything we can do to contribute to a potential positive development in the near future for the human race. And that may seem like a long shot at the moment, given the magnitude of obstacles that we are confronting. But line up a long shot, maybe try 2 times, maybe more. Yeah. I mean, the most improbable thing, as I always say, has already happened. The universe exists and we are conscious. And if that can happen, anything can happen, because it's literally impossible and it happened anyways. That is another really interesting one of those manifestations of universal law, because everything contains its contradiction and everything is balanced by its opposite. In order for something to be possible, it must also be impossible. Paradox. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go see what happened out there, and hopefully things are all good. I guess I'm kind of hesitating because I'm afraid I'm going to find problems. But yeah, all right, I'll see you guys either later tonight, maybe with some music, or definitely the patrons tomorrow for a secret stream. And good night.